and welcome to Retro Warriors episode 437. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by viable human being Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Hi, Saturn. You made it to the show.
Yeah, I've been here.
I was so worried. How was traffic
What?
getting to the studio?
How much caffeine have you had?
Either too much or not enough, and I'm not
Okay.
sure which one it is. I'm not sleeping normally anymore, so
Cool.
that's happening.
That's good.
And I've been having such vivid dreams lately that I'm having trouble distinguishing what I did and what I dreamed that I did.
Score. I had a dream that we were doing this show.
Oh.
That we were recording the show. I don't know if it was this episode or a different episode. And I just remember you making a joke about how you refuse to play games on casual.
The opposite of true.
Right, yeah, you were just joking around, but for some reason you expanded on it to say, I don't even set my dryer to casual. I won't even take a job that makes me wear business casual because I only wear business hardcore. And then I woke up and I was laughing about it, and then I made sure to note it on the actual show.
Just the notion that I'm against the concept of casualness.
Yeah.
That's I don't care about the easiness. I'm just against casuality
Right. Yeah.
as a concept.
It's not who you are.
This is not everything is life is hardcore. As far as housekeeping, I do want to say that I've not even looked at these notes. So big
good.
thank you to Saturn for writing these notes, because this last week has been a fucking blur for me.
Yeah?
A week ago was my daughter's 8th birthday party, and she wanted to have her party at home. And anyone who's ever hosted a litany of small children in their house at any point in time knows that it's a nightmare. And it is basically a 3-day process in which it's prep, the event, and then clean up after the event. And of course, after that, my kid was immediately off school for like the whole week.
Right.
And it was Thanksgiving a couple days ago, which of course leads into Thanksgiving too. And also, next weekend, I have a very fancy Christmas event, so my wife had to drag us out Black Friday weekend shopping to get clothes to wear because she's working this week and won't have time to get out to the shops.
Right.
So it has been a fucking nightmare of a week.
Sweet.
I don't know what has happened. I keep forgetting the date. I keep forgetting what month it is. I don't know where I am. Just earlier today, I was like, Courtney, it's only been a week since Harper's party. And we were like, that can't possibly be right. That was like a month ago. No, it has been a week.
Oof.
So it's been rough. It's been very, very busy.
But you made it. Now the rest of the year will be easy, right?
Oh, God. We were tabulating all of our Christmas events that we're going to.
Yeah.
I think right now we're at 6, but 2 or 3 of them have yet to be scheduled. And so for people that don't know how months work, there's only like 30 days in a month.
31.
31 days in the month. And so that's a lot of Christmases. And it's why I dislike the holiday season, because it's so busy. It's so busy all the time. So as far as housekeeping, Saturn, thank you for doing all of the notes.
Yeah.
Because...
What else am I doing?
You said it, not me. What the fuck else are you doing?
I don't got a family or 12 Thanksgivings to attend, Justin.
I did play the game, so I did the important part of my week. The biggest news is that my 1 terabyte Steam Deck limited edition, that's so limited that it's still in stock literally right now.
Nice.
Has come in. It is in my home. Yeah, it got here fast, and I can't have it.
Did Gabe give it to you himself?
He might have been the one that left it at my gate. I don't know.
Yeah.
I am in Texas, and my property is gated, and that's basically a recipe for getting shot. So he could have showed up, and maybe he was just like, I'm not fucking going up there. Like, I'm gonna leave it at the gate.
He does look like Santa these days, so maybe he did.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is very true. So it has arrived in my home. I cannot have it
until Christmas.
So my wife and I are very bad about, like, we buy each other Christmas gifts, drive straight home, and we're like, here you go. This is for Christmas in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We're just bad. And so it was not her. I imposed the restriction on myself. I told her, I said, hey, because she was out of town when it went on sale, and she came back in town. And I was like, hey, well, you're out of town. You bought my Christmas. And she was like, oh, how convenient.
Nice.
And I said, but you cannot give it to me until Santa Claus gives it to me. And so I have to wait. We did take it out of the package, and I did get to hold it and look at it just to make sure like it arrived. Because it's just like in a single cardboard box in its case. So I was like, let me make sure it didn't like get smashed up in shipping. We don't have to do an RMA or anything, just to be safe because it's kind of pricey. And immediately, gorgeous machine, really gorgeous. And the accents are very orange in person. There was some debate in our Steam Deck channel over whether they were red or orange. Yeah. And we had people looking at the accents on different monitors. It is very orange in person. Also, it is a lot lighter, noticeably lighter, which I did not expect. But I have not powered it on. It's just going to sit there and wait till Santa Claus squeezes his fat ass through my dog door and leaves it under my tree. Because how else would he get in the house?
That's all he does.
I've also been playing the video games. Half-Life got an update. It's like, its 25th anniversary update 25th or something anniversary like that? Edition. And I didn't own the original Half-Life. I only had the Source Engine Half-Life, which I think was free at some point. So I actually went on Steam and bought the like Valve pack of like Team Fortress, Counter-Strike, Condition Zero, Blue Shift, Half-Life, all in, one big. I completed my bundle, as it were. And Half-Life is now also Steam Deck verified.
Nice.
And I can verify that it works very well on Steam Deck, as does Half-Life 2, which has also been Steam Deck verified. And it's fun. I started up a new game, or I guess my first game, because I played the Source version and the remake. And I set my Steam Deck down and let it run through its, intro train crawl for like 7 or 8 hours, or however long that takes.
Yeah, almost long enough to finish it.
And I was like, that was fun. I'm gonna go poke around with some of the other, old school Valve stuff like Counter-Strike Condition Zero or Team Fortress or whatever.
Right.
Turns out the 25th anniversary update borked all of those. It fucked up the Gold Source engine, so those games didn't function anymore. So you have to put Half-Life to the legacy version and then update all of those because they use the same files as Half-Life.
Nice.
And then they will function. I just kind of messed around with some of that stuff. I don't have a ton of nostalgia for like old Valve stuff. Like I played Counter-Strike a little bit, but that was it. My first Half-Life was Half-Life 2. My introduction to Valve software was the Orange Box.
Yeah.
Which is pretty late.
I didn't really play much of their stuff until Portal, so I'm with you.
So you were kind of right there with me then. Yeah. So, just been goofing around with some of that stuff, and a lot of it's still fun. I was hoping Condition Zero, which is kind of billed as like, hey, it's single-player Counter-Strike. I was hoping to be more of a single-player Counter-Strike than just like, hey, here's bot matches that we put conditions on. But that's kind of what it is. Because I like Counter-Strike, but I don't like everyone else who plays Counter-Strike.
So... It's an important clarification there.
I got into it with a group of friends a while back, and my favorite way to play was all of us on a team together versus bots. And it was just really fun and chill and casual, and like I had a really good time doing it. And everyone else was like, let's go like play for real. Like we don't. And I'm like, this is for real. This is how I play.
Well, I'm very similar whenever I'm playing Civilization or StarCraft or any of that. I always want to play a team of humans versus the computer so that we can show our superiority over the computer.
Right. You have to teach computers who's boss at some juncture. Just to ensure that your Skynet death will be swift and brutal. I don't know. I like it. Like, I'm not big into like military teamwork shooters, but I like the vibe of like hanging out with friends and just like kind of strategizing and casually playing against bots. Strategizing, and if they're too hard, we can just make them easier, Anyway, I've also been playing the Super Mario RPG. I got it in the mail. It came out, and it's a game, and I'm playing it.
Yeah, my copy arrived yesterday, and I have not started it yet.
I think I'm last night. I made it to the 2nd star.
Okay. And
so I'm progressing at a decent
pretty good
clip.
Progress.
And it's just I have no opinions on it so far. Really, everything. I'm like, this is just fine. Like that's how it feels. But Saturn, I want to hear about what you've been playing because I've been seeing you playing this, and I've not heard you say anything in the chat about it, and I'm very curious.
So I am playing Like a Dragon Gaiden : The Man Who Erased His Name.
Yeah. Is it the full title?
That is
It's
the
not
full
Sega
title.
Presents : it's
Actually, I had gotten a physical copy. I had forgotten that I had ordered a physical copy, but I did order a physical copy. I'm playing it on Game Pass because, of course, I am. But my physical copy came from PlayAsia. It's the Asia print, which has English, but the cover is not in English. It's got the Japanese cover. And so I pointed my phone at it with the Google Translate to see what it actually said. And it came up with the exact English title, except for it called it Yakuza 7 Gaiden instead of Like a Dragon Gaiden.
All right.
Okay. But I was surprised. I thought that it was a bad translation to this awkward, enormous subtitle. No, it's neat. It's basically Yakuza 6 using a very similar engine, if not the same game engine as Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 6. And you play as Kiryu, only now you're a secret agent because of the events of Yakuza 6, which I won't get into. And you have a little the first gadget you get is your spider web, which is in his watch, and if he touches his watch he can launch a web to tie somebody up like Spider-Man.
Standard feature in many Casios.
Right. Yeah, it's a Casio. That's what he's got. And then your second gadget is a drone, and it's a little tiny drone, like barely the size of your hand, but you can summon in like 30 of them, and they just swarm the enemies like really annoying birds.
Yeah.
And that's pretty fun. But other than that, it plays just like a normal standard Yakuza, and I'm enjoying that. And you can unlock a Sega Master System and play Master System games in it, including Fantasy Zone.
How cute.
Yeah. But no, it's cute. It's a fun Yakuza game. It's just as stupid and ridiculous as all the rest of the games in the series are. But gameplay wise, it is very much like the more classic traditional games in the series.
Let me ask you this, because I fell out of Ishin. Like, it was fun, and I liked it, but it just, I don't know, there was something, I don't know. It wasn't compelling. Like, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't compelling enough for me to keep going with it. And so I just kind of dropped it. I think I put about 10 hours in, and I was like, meh, and moved on. As someone who has not played Yakuza 6, should I not play this one and just go muscle through the Yakuzas I have not played?
I would consider playing 6 first, just so that you can understand how Kiryu ended up in this situation.
6. Okay.
But I don't think it's necessary, because they do kind of tell you what's going on. But when they tell you what's going on, it spoils wide swaths of all of the previous games, but especially 6.
Yeah.
6 is good, though. I liked 6.
I think I've really only done 1 and 2. I did 1, 2, because I did Kiwami 1 and 2. I did Like a Dragon.
Yeah.
I started 0 and just wasn't in love with it.
Well, 6 uses the same game engine as Kiwami 2, so if you liked that one,
I
you
did
might
like Kiwami
6.
2. Yeah.
It's got that same ridiculous ragdoll engine where everybody just collapses into a pile of limbs.
Yes.
And the best part about Yakuza 6 is there is a point where you end up taking care of a baby. And you have to walk this baby around, but as Kiryu, who is this enormous Yakuza person.
Yeah.
And then occasionally the baby will cry, and you have to pick it up and do this interactive mini game to get it to stop crying. And I
feel like what
so
you
dumb.
think you're doing is trying to make it sound fun.
No, I'm trying to make it sound stupid. Because that's the part that I like about the Yakuza games, is when they get really dumb.
Because I would really, like, in a perfect world, I would play through Yakuza 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, if you had infinite time.
Right. But then 3, 4, and 5 is kind of a weird
very
spot.
PS3-y.
Yeah, because you're coming from the remasters, Kiwami, straight into, like, Yakuza 3 is remastered. Well, really, 3, 4, and 5 are all labeled as remasters.
Yeah, but they're really
it's
just
more like
HD rezzed a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some minor tweaks to make them a little better, but
I've also heard that Gaiden is shorter, like it's a side game almost.
That's what I hear. I'm not far enough in to say that definitively. I'm still in the 3rd chapter. But it's still, I'm digging it so far. It seems to have all of the the Yakuza style and ridiculousness that I was expecting. One thing I'll say for Yakuza 6, if it helps make your mind up. Do you know who Beat Takeshi is?
Yeah,
he's in Yakuza 6. He plays a patriarch, and it's hilarious. He is just hilarious.
I need to get back to those games. I really, really enjoyed Kiwami 1 and 2 a lot, and then staring down the barrel of Yakuza 3 felt like such a downgrade.
Oh, it is.
I kind of lost my momentum a little bit. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
After having played them all in a row, I would strongly recommend taking a long gap before going to 3, just so that you forget how good 1 and 2 are.
Now, it has been my long gap. I played Kiwami 1 and 2 like a year ago, 2 years ago. So there's been a gap. So maybe it wouldn't bother me so much now. It's hard to say.
But it's good. I'm digging it. I am enjoying it.
Yeah. Let's do the news, which there's not a lot of. Holidays are news light.
Yeah.
First up, Take-Two CEO once again says that video game prices are very, very low during an investor call. What? Remind me again what video games Take-Two has produced, Saturn? Is that?
Well, notably, there was Greg Hastings Grand Theft Auto. That was the one. They did.
I see, the very affordable Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I think this is all a setup for him announcing, or that company anyway, announcing that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to cost way more than we expect.
My anticipation is that it's going to be, hey, here's the campaign for $70. But then look, the online is free with lots and lots of microtransactions. They're gonna feel really mandatory to actually kind of get a good experience out of it.
I think they're gonna sell the campaign for $60, the online for another $60, or the complete package that has both for $100.
Well, but then you got to have your silver, gold, and deluxe editions of each of them.
Oh, there are. I'm not discounting that possibility.
It's gonna be a nightmare. Whatever they do, it's gonna be chock full of fucking battle passes and all this other shit. And like, I think what breaks my heart is that I love the core gameplay of Grand Theft Auto so much. Just like running around, stealing cars, driving around, running from the cops. I love that. That's fun. That's a really good time.
Yeah.
And nothing quite does it like GTA. I mean, even Saints Row, the good Saints Rows, which we have to say now because just
they really
numerically there's not many of them. There's like there's 1.5 really good Saints Row games.
That's about right.
But then like the core gameplay of GTA I've always loved. I've really enjoyed all of the GTA games. I don't even know what the fuck the stories are about because I don't engage with them at all. But just as a sandbox to run around in and have fun, I really enjoy it. And to see them still doing that where they're like, hey, we have this really good core that no one else has been able to really do as good as us yet, but we're going to layer all of this fucking, shit bullshit on top of it for you to get down to it. It's very disheartening and it upsets me.
Yeah.
Fan devs managed to get a proof of concept build of Capcom's Marvel superheroes running on the Genesis.
Did you see this?
I saw screenshots of it.
Holy shit.
I didn't see it in motion.
There are a couple of videos. There's one that's, I believe it was 2 Juggernauts fighting. And then there's another one that's Juggernaut versus Hulk. And the sprites are like accurate size for Marvel superheroes. So like the entire screen. And it is running on Genesis hardware. And the only way I could tell definitively in the video that it was Genesis hardware was that the audio sounded like cats shitting. But otherwise, it looks really good. Obviously, it's a proof of concept. They haven't gotten a whole game out of it, but it makes me wonder the alternate universe where they kept making Genesis games, if this could have feasibly come out on there.
Yeah. Well, again, like we say so many times on this show, I'm glad someone's doing that work.
Right?
I don't know that I want to use it myself.
I'd check it out.
I'm glad it's out there. Canceled Konami Famicom Battle Choice turns up at a Yahoo Auction Japan auction.
Oh, sorry, I left a word out of that.
Yahoo Japan auction.
Yeah, it canceled Konami Famicom Game Battle Choice. My bad.
I assume the game was called Famicom Battle Choice.
No, it's called Battle Choice.
Anyway, winner is a private investor with no ties to the preservation community who will presumably maybe let us have it for...
Doesn't look like it, no.
No, not at all. I see.
Video Game History Foundation was the runner-up. They were trying real hard, and this dude outbid them. And
you don't have to say private investor. You can just put piece of shit in the notes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like that's fine. I don't mind that at all. Keeper FX, an open source recreation of Dungeon Keeper, has reached version 1.0.0, and I'm going to download and play it because Dungeon Keeper is really fun. But the interface on the game is it's dated.
I was wondering if you had tried this yet or not.
I've not tried this. I didn't know about this, and I've just not sat down to fuss with it. But I really like Dungeon Keeper. It's one of my. I play it on GOG a lot.
Yeah.
Just really fun games. I like. There's this weird subgenre of like games in which you make your own dungeon, and I have, without exception, enjoyed all of them.
Nice.
The Dungeons franchise, What Did I Do to Deserve This, My Lord, Dungeon Keeper, anything where you're building your own dungeon and watching heroes run through it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nice.
So much fun. Also, runner-up genre for me is you being the big bad evil guy like in the Overlord games, which were also really fun.
Nice.
Really fun, silly games. And that brings us to our topic at hand, which is Faxanadu?
Yeah.
Is how I'm going to pronounce it?
Yeah, because we're American and that's how we pronounce it.
Right. Although I think more appropriately would be Faxanadu.
Yeah, I actually have a note on that later in the notes.
All right. Well, we'll deal with it then. I just wanted to say up front, I think you and I are both acquainted with saying Faxanadu.
Yeah, because that's how Nintendo marketed it in the West, too.
Yeah, and so that's how we're going to say it. So
yes.
Before anyone gets upset, we live in Texas, so we're allowed to say stuff stupid and wrong. So that's just
and we're allowed to play Faxanadu in tank mode. It's fine.
Synopsis is the winner for highest blinks per minute of any NES game. I won't even dispute that.
It's accurate.
Release info. This was developed by Hudson Soft based on Falcom's Xanadu sub-series. Published in Japan by Hudson, internationally by Nintendo. Came out in Japan in November of 1987, which puts it 10 months after the Famicom Disk System release of Zelda 2, which is going to be a very important time frame for my critiques of the game. We'll say that. We'll say it that way.
Yeah.
Came out in North America August 1989, European territories December 28th, 1990, which feels late for this game.
Yeah.
Man. Saturn does have a note on pronunciation. It's technically pronounced Faxanadu because Xanadu is already an established pronunciation, which we know because of Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah. But Nintendo, when they marketed in the West, did call it Faxanadu. So that's what I have learned, and it's what has been stuck in my head for 30 some odd years now.
As far as First Encounters, this is not a game I ever played. It's not a game that was ever on my radar. And I think, I might have booted it up once just based on the kind of very, Western fantasy sort of cover art of the game, which feels like we wish we were Zelda's cover art, but we aren't, kind of like weird.
That's intentional. Nintendo intentionally made it look like Zelda cover art. Yeah.
And I think
if you look at the Japanese cover, it does not look like that.
The time, this was really the first time I really sat down to play it, but I had booted it up not long ago because after our Infernax episode, we were like, yeah, it's this great Zelda 2 clone. And then you kept being like, yeah, it's this great Zelda 2 and Faxanadu clone. And I was like, I guess I need to go play that game. And I booted it up back then, and I was like, oh, this seems bad. And then I turned it off, and I never went back to it. So we decided to do this episode on it, and I was excited to play it.
Yeah.
I was very excited because I had watched you and Andrew play Infernax co-op mode at your house recently.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was like, I was re-annoyed that there were not more games like Infernax.
Yeah, that's true.
And I remember you being like, hey, Faxanadu is like Infernax. And I was like, all right, well, let's do an episode on it. Let's put in the time and we'll play it. What about you, Saturn?
I probably first heard of this on Captain N back in the day. And then I rented it.
The Game Master.
Yes. And then I rented the game, and it felt super deep, and eventually I was able to get a used copy, and I played through it many times over the years. But it's always been one of my less well-known but still enjoyed NES games.
Yeah, your kind of sleeper NES games.
Yeah.
Well, Saturn, I think first we need to establish what the fuck a Xanadu is.
Yes.
Because I don't think this game has much to do with the movie.
No, that's
with
true.
Olivia
It is
Newton-John.
only tangentially related.
Which I've also not seen the movie. I was going to watch the movie before I played the game so that I was ready for it. But
you would
then
not
I
have
didn't.
been ready for
It wouldn't have helped?
No. They are both musicals.
Oh, right.
Now, so Xanadu, the game, is technically a sequel to Dragon Slayer. So we kind of have to start with Dragon Slayer. In 84, Falcom released the first Dragon Slayer game, which was a long-running series of RPG and RPG-adjacent games. First game was released on the PC-88 in 1984 and is often cited as one of the first, if not the very first, action RPGs ever released. Because a lot of the RPGs being released outside of Japan, which weren't very many in 84, were still very text-based adventures and menu-based adventures.
And obviously, like the Xanadu movie, Dragon Slayer is based on the Dragon Slayer 1981 film by Matthew Robbins, right? Is that?
Yeah, definitely. I would not at all be surprised if Falcom stole the names from those two things, by the way. That is
well,
definitely
the Dragon
their
Slayer
kind of
film,
thing.
it's one word.
Yeah, and
So if
the
game is
logo
two
for the
words-
game is always spelled as one word as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But they always list it as two words when showing the title.
Well, all right then.
So, the success of Dragon Slayer led to its sequel in 85, which was Xanadu, which was also released on PC-88. And while the first game was an overhead dungeon crawler, the second game had a side-scrolling perspective during exploration and an overhead view when you were in combat. So it changed some things up. And Xanadu was incredibly successful in Japan, and it introduced a lot of the features that would later become commonplace in RPG video games like karma systems and equipment that can change your character's appearance. You didn't really see those things in video games too often at that point.
You didn't see equipment that changes your character's appearance until like the PS2 era regularly anyway.
Right, yeah. Like occasionally it would happen before that, but it was pretty uncommon. But even way back in 85, Xanadu was doing it.
Yeah.
And then they followed that up with Xanadu Scenario 2, which was basically an expansion pack. It was non-linear and it had music from Yuzo Koshiro, which was his first credited role in a video game, which we talked about when we did that episode. And Dragon Slayer as a franchise would continue. The third game was Dragon Slayer Junior Romancia, which was a child-friendly simplified RPG.
I love the implication that anything with the word Slayer in the title is for this is the Slayer thing for children.
It's the
Dragon
Junior Slayer.
Junior.
And you have Dragon Slayer 4, the Drassel family, which is just the first three letters from Dragon and Slayer.
Yeah, it is.
But it was released in the West as Legacy of the Wizard, which is a kind of a Metroidvania-y game. And then you have Dragon Slayer 5, Sorcerian, Dragon Slayer 6, The Legend of Heroes, and then Dragon Slayer 7, Lord Monarch. And then the Legend of Heroes subseries continues today through the Trails games. And only a few of those ever actually made it to the West, but some of them did. And then there's also been a handful of sequels to Xanadu as well, in addition to the expansion packs. And for Xanadu, there was Dragon Slayer 8, The Legend of Xanadu, which also got its own sequel. There was Xanadu Next, which hilariously released first on the N-Gage. Don't know how that happened. And then there
Unfortunately, that's how it happened.
And then there was Tokyo Xanadu on PS5 and PS4. So this game is kind of related to Tokyo Xanadu in a tangential way.
Yeah. Yeah, which I remember came out and you played it, and I kept waiting for the price to go down because I wasn't sure about how I felt about it.
Yeah, the company that published it in the West doesn't do a lot of sales for some reason.
Yeah. Tell me about the development of Faxanadu.
Yeah, so it was developed in-house by Hudson. It was because Xanadu had done so well, they wanted to try to port it to the Famicom because the Famicom was also doing so well. So Hudson and Falcom teamed up in one of their first of many team-ups to make a port of Xanadu to the Famicom. But then at some point they realized they didn't want to port the original game. So they made a sharp departure and made a completely original game. And they never officially said why, But the speculation in Japanese media of the time said that either Hudson felt the original game would be too complicated for a Famicom audience, or that Falcom may have never given Hudson any of the game's actual source code or production files, which led them to start from scratch. And that sounds like a Falcom thing to do, to be honest.
That sounds like the most realistic situation.
Yeah, so that's probably what happened. As we mentioned, the game's title is a portmanteau of Famicom and Xanadu, which is how you get to Faxanadu.
Which it could also be a portmanteau of Falcom and Xanadu.
It could be.
Would also work.
Right, but then the original Xanadu was already Falcom.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The soundtrack for this one, for Faxanadu, was composed by Jun Chikuma, who is also known for her work on Bomberman and Military Madness and the Wonder Boy games. She wasn't the only composer, but she was the credited composer.
Yeah.
The Western release of the game was handled by Nintendo directly, who only partially censored the game for some reason.
It's very weird.
There's still cigarettes in there. They did get rid of most of the religious stuff.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. In the Japanese version, it wasn't just a couple of crosses. There were crosses.
Right. Oh, they were everywhere.
There was full-size fucking Christ on the cross crucifixes in all of the churches. Like, crown of thorns, dangling there, whole 9 yards, man. Like, it was pretty brutal.
Very, very blatant Christian imagery.
Yeah.
Which they did remove, but they left all the cigarettes in.
Although they look a little weird. I thought maybe some of them were pipes. They looked kind of pipe-like.
One of them is a pipe. Yeah.
Maybe pipes are okay. Well,
but
they still
others are
cigarettes.
definitely cigarettes, though.
Yeah. The guy in the bar always looked like he had a pipe.
Yeah. That guy's the pipe guy. And the box art for Faxanadu, like you mentioned, Nintendo intended to present this as a successor or companion piece to the Zelda games. That was their intention when they made that box art. They wanted it to look like Zelda on the shelf because from Nintendo of America's perspective, this was their next successor to Zelda.
Yeah.
They didn't quite hit the mark as far as marketing there because nobody remembers that.
No.
But that was their intention. I don't think they probably hit their sales mark either, but I couldn't find any definitive data on that.
Let's talk story. This game does have a surprising amount of story.
True. But a lot of it is not told through text,
No.
which is nice.
You get a little bit at the beginning, and there's people to talk to. You get tidbits here and there.
They'll blink
I'd
at
say
you while they talk.
It's probably about as much story delivered in game as like Zelda 2.
Right.
So you have the elves and dwarves, and they used to live harmoniously around the world tree.
Yep.
With elves at the base and dwarves higher up on a cliff. And after a meteorite carrying the evil one, who I guess is an alien, crashed into the area, the dwarves were turned into monsters and began attacking the elves. The king of the dwarves swallowed his magical sword to prevent the evil one from obtaining it.
Because apparently only that one sword can possibly hurt the evil one.
Yeah. Or he could have just killed the king of dwarves and like cut it out of him, in a Fifth Element type situation. The cubes are inside me. Our one person out there is so excited that I remembered that scene from the Fifth Element. If you're there, please write in. Our protagonist, unnamed in the West, in Japan, it is implied to be the hero from Xanadu, returns from his elven hometown of Aeolis. The kingdom is mostly abandoned due to attacks by the dwarves. The elven king then informs that the kingdom's water source has been stopped and the remaining water is poison, and gives you 1,500 golds and wishes you luck. I forget what the currency was called in the uncensored version.
Oh, I don't know.
It was not called golds. It was called something else.
Oh, I just always loved the typo in the very first bit of dialogue where he's like, take these 1,500 golds.
Here you go. Here's all these golds. I feel like they call it golds multiple times.
They probably do.
I feel like every time they mentioned gold, it was golds. Here's all these golds.
I have to think that was a copy-paste error.
It had to have been.
Yeah.
As far as presentation, this game is pretty ugly.
Aw.
It's an ugly game, Saturn.
I disagree.
It is very fucking brown.
Yeah.
It's browns on grays. It's not. It's just not.
I would disagree with that. I think a lot of the sprite work is really impressive. I think the backgrounds are too busy. I'll say that. But as far as the color palettes, I think that's pretty original for the NES. You don't see a whole lot of those dark brown and dark gray games on NES. Everything, even like a horror themed stuff like Castlevania and Friday the 13th and Monster Party, were generally very bright and vibrant. And this is a rare dark game on the NES, and it gave it a different kind of mood at the time. But it does make it hard to see some things.
I found it very drab. I found it very boring. I found really the uncensored version of the game is visually much more interesting because the censoring they did do, they just clipped the shit out. And a lot of the sprites are changed a little bit. True. And the US version of the game looks worse.
I would agree with that.
It looks noticeably worse than the Japanese version. So I will say, because I did play a ROM hack that uncensored everything, and it did look better. I still didn't love it, but at that point, it felt like more of a taste thing. And the censored US version feels very like, I don't know. I didn't like it. I did not like it. I do like you put it in the notes, and I noticed it as well. This weird kind of H.R. Geiger feel, the kind of alien feel to everything.
Which explains why the evil one isn't a meteorite, Justin.
Which is, oh my God.
Now, there are several bosses that look like they're straight up out of Alien.
I do think whenever you talk to people, they get actual portraits, which is that was pretty impressive. Pretty impressive for an NES game. For whatever reason, they look like the unblinking eyeball lady, but blinking too much in all of the portraits. That look very strange, but it's cool to see portraits. That was a neat touch.
And also, I know that the people are supposed to look like they're sad because of whatever's going on in the world, but they all look like they're very sleepy.
They do. I like the soundtrack. It's okay.
I love the soundtrack in this game.
I would say it's a pretty good NES soundtrack. Like I was humming it for a couple days.
Yeah, I would say there's several great tracks and a handful of forgettable tracks.
Yeah. So let's talk about the bad part. Which is playing the game.
I enjoy this game.
This game sucks. So here's the thing. I mean, we have disagreed on games before.
Sure, yeah.
But I feel like there is such a difference of opinion here that it's rare that I actually struggle to see where you're coming from. And we're going to get into it, but I hated this game so much.
That's so sad.
That I made it right to the end, and I was sitting there on the couch, and like Courtney said something to me, and I was like, "All right, I'll do it." Like I snapped, like I was like, I didn't scream at her, but I gave her like a snappy response, and I realized that playing Faxanadu was making me so upset that it was actively ruining my night.
That's weird.
That's how upset I was at the game because of how unfun I was finding it.
Man.
And I was like right there at the end, and I stopped myself because I was like, I'm not going to let this game ruin any more of my life. That's how bad it was.
And you already had the wing boots already?
I had the wing boots. Man. I was flipping cheats on and off.
By the time I have the wing boots, I'm just having a good time in the game.
I fucking hated this game.
That's so sad.
So this game is it is a side-scrolling kind of action RPG in which you travel through various towns. There are stretches of enemies and dungeons in between where you go around finding various MacGuffins and getting different keys and items to unlock new areas to progress further through the relatively linear world because there is no real overworld function. It's just kind of walk right and you will eventually get to the end of the game.
Yeah, especially the beginning is incredibly linear. And also it starts out much more difficult, and it eventually gets much easier.
Yeah, it is
to the point where the last boss is kind of a cakewalk.
The physics of the game, and I think so. I love Zelda 2. Let me put this out there. And I know that this is another point where we kind of disagree, where, I mean, I think you agree that Zelda 2 is a good game.
Sure.
But you don't like it. I know that you're kind of on record as like, you don't love Zelda 2.
I don't hate Zelda 2.
It's fine.
I think it has plenty of flaws.
I fucking love Zelda 2. And I love the combat of Zelda 2. Because the combat is I like the nuance of it, right? You've got the up attack, you got high attacks, low attacks, downward attacks. I like the different spell systems. I really like the combat in Zelda 2. It adds a lot of granularity. There's a lot of combat options. And for the limitations of the NES, having relatively nuanced combat like that I find that very interesting.
Yeah, my big complaint about Zelda 2, my biggest complaint about Zelda 2 is all of the instant death pits and how easy it is to get knocked into instant death pits all the time.
Oh, well, let me talk to you about this game called fucking Faxanadu, Saturn.
That has no instant death pits.
It has worse than instant death pits.
No.
It has spots, multiple spots where okay, we got to back up. We got to back the fuck up.
Uh-huh.
So that's the basic premise of the game. Imagine like kind of more linear, much more simplistic Zelda 2.
With no overworld.
With no overworld. So like Zelda 2, it feels
it's not completely linear. There are plenty of times you have to backtrack.
Yeah, there are some branching paths.
Yeah.
But usually it's just like, all right, I can go this way or this way. It's not very... It doesn't get very complex.
There's not a ton of areas either. It does kind of feel like the game got rushed. Like the first half of the game feels much more fleshed out than the last half of the game.
So it is like Zelda 2 with the physics of Castlevania 1. That's what this feels like to me.
I can kind of see where you're coming from with that,
The jumping is flat out, it is Castlevania 1 jumping.
Yeah, only shorter.
Shorter, but like in that whenever you press the jump button, if you do not have forward momentum, you just go straight up and straight down. Yeah. And you cannot gain that forward momentum while jumping.
True.
So that's an irritation, but I can get used to it. Right. But the amount of run up to gaining the forward momentum in the jump feels longer than in Castlevania, to the point that I struggled making basic jumps all the way through the entire game in its entirety.
Yeah, I don't have that issue too often.
And I don't know if it's because I've played so much Castlevania and that maybe it's like fighting my muscle memory with Castlevania 1.
I could definitely see that, yeah.
Because Castlevania 1, you do, like if in Castlevania 1, you have to hold forward while you jump to jump forward.
Right.
But it's a pretty short window. Like you can pretty much press it and then jump.
Exactly.
In this, you can't do that. You have to have a run up, a
little bit of a momentum,
running jump. And I think in my head, I'm just not fucking doing that. Right. I walk up to a cliff and I just fall right the fuck off of it all the time.
And the knockback probably didn't help you either.
It didn't. And this leads me into my other issue is that there are areas of the game, there were multiple spots in the game where to progress the game, I had to climb up a ladder or enter a zone. And as soon as I entered the zone, an enemy was there and it would hit me and knock me back into the previous zone. And it would happen such that I couldn't attack before they did it.
You got to use magic.
There was one area of the game where I was trapped on a ladder and I couldn't hit him with magic. I couldn't hit him with my sword because he was like above me, but low enough to hit me. And so I'm literally trapped on this ladder. And this is when I quit the game.
Yeah.
I finally just turned fast forward on and I held down the turbo attack button and just started holding up so that I'm just at 300 FPS flying up into this screen. And I'm like, eventually, through the process of just random number generation, I will happen to hit him. And so I'm just going to hold this for 5 minutes. 5 minutes I was stuck doing that. And finally I turned the fast forward off. I'm like, I don't fucking know what to do. And then I just walk up there and I can stand on an open pit now, like the game glitches. And multiple times I had fallen onto open pits and just stood there. Nothing happened. Pits that I had previously fallen through.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess I can hit him now. Thanks for
detection is a
game.
little weird sometimes.
It's a little weird.
Yeah.
It's the understatement of the century. Collision detection blows.
It is one of those games, like a lot of games from 1987, where you kind of have to learn what it wants the rules of physics to be, and they are not what you expect them to be. And
I would agree with that.
Until you learn them, it feels punishing. And that was the case for a lot of games at that era, including Zelda 2, including Castlevania, including Mega Man, stuff like that. Until you learn that universe's rules of physics, it's going to be punishing. And so I can definitely see where you're coming from. I have 30 years of muscle memory in this game, so I know what it expects of me physics-wise.
I think the difference here is like in Zelda 2, because of the granularity of the combat, whenever I would get rebuffed in a situation, I would have many options. I would have many different abilities, options, and avenues of attack that I could consider and try to topple whatever, obstacle was before me. Faxanadu is a much simpler game and just has a lot less options available to you as a player at any given moment.
I like that, least, though.
As far as like combat and stuff goes.
Right. Yeah, see, that's what I want. I want my combat to be simple. So that I don't have to think about all those things. So Zelda 2's combat frustrates me all the time. If the thing that I am trying to do doesn't work, I get frustrated and end up getting out of the area or turning it off or coming back later. Yeah, I don't want to strategize about that in a real time RPG-ish game.
That's what I like about Zelda 2. That's why I love like the Dark Nut fights in Zelda 2. Like it's fun for me to have this combat that I'm having to actively strategize and think about and be like, all right, well, I got killed or I didn't make it or I got knocked back to a previous screen or whatever. Like what in my arsenal can I do differently? What maneuver can I do differently?
I hate that.
In fact, Xanadu has none of that. So when you get in these situations, your options are have 30 years of muscle memory or wish that the game was never made. Like these are your two.
In fairness, I did play the game before I had the 30 years of muscle memory because I played through this 30 years ago and was able to get to the end.
I have other issues with the game. First of all, every single item you get, except for things you equip, because you can get better armor and better weapons and upgrade the ability of your magic spell that just kind of shoots out from you like a little fireball.
Right.
Other than items that you personally equip, everything is single use.
Yeah.
And my biggest problem is the single use keys, which at their outset, like in Zelda 1, except in Zelda 1, Saturn, you'll remember, a key was a key was a key.
That's true.
Right? Any key worked on any lock.
That's
so
true. Keys
were consumable. They were a resource you had to be aware of, but it wasn't really like, oh, I don't have the key for that door. It was just, oh, I don't have a key. I'll go get a key.
So they were not very useful keys is what we're getting at. Because in the real world,
that's true. Right.
If you had a key that just opened any door, that'd be a problem.
So in this game, there are several types of keys.
Right.
And the keys are named by letters: the Q key, the K key, the J key, the A
playing
key.
Cards. Yeah.
And they correspond to doors with names: King, Queen, Joker, Ace, that correspond to the letter of the key. So if you walk up to a door and that key, that door needs a Q key, and you have a J key, well, it's not going to work.
Right.
The wrong key, which I'll hand it to you. Yes, that is slightly more realistic.
That's how keys work.
To real life.
Yes.
But because there is no overworld,
right?
If you need to backtrack, it's just you going backward through large swaths of this game.
But once you have the wing boots, you just kind of fly back.
The single-use wing boots,
right?
And you can only hold 8 items in your inventory at any given time. And if you want 2 wing boots, that's 2 inventory slots. So if you want to have one of each key, then you're going to be limited on how many wing boots or potions or elixirs or whatever else you can have.
Have you considered having Nintendo Power there to tell you which key you need when?
There it is. There's the answer. I don't know how you play this game without wanting to frisbee your controller without a full guide.
That was the thing back then.
It is the single-use items make it very frustrating. Now, let me tell you this, too. If you go up to a door and you see it's a Q key and you go to your inventory and you accidentally use the J key, that J key's gone. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one. How about the time that I used my Q key and right when I did, an enemy hit me off screen? Well, that Q key is fucking gone when you go back to the next screen.
Yeah, that's a lesson you only want to learn once.
The single-use item thing is infuriating. For things like wing boots and there's one key in the game, the Ace key, that you have to get from a guy.
Yep.
This guy gives you the key. You do some stuff and then you give him this thing and he goes, all right, well, here's the key for the Ace door, the key A. And then you use it, but then I kept having to backtrack through there to the previous town, and you just go back to him, and he keeps giving you A keys.
Yes. Yeah. He's got a lot of them.
And in my head, I'm like, just make it a non-consumable fucking key. Like, why don't... I had
why couldn't he just give me the whole key ring?
I had massive problems with... That was frustrating, and this is on top of, again, the very simple combat, the weird physics, the weird jumping... I was not having a fun time with it.
That's unfortunate because this is one of those games that I still go back to every now and then. I still enjoy this because I just replayed this last year, I believe.
Yeah.
I probably talked about it on the show, but it's one that I still like to go back to from time to time.
Like, if I had memorized where every item and key was, that would alleviate still only some of my complaints, but it still would alleviate some of them.
Yeah.
My other issue is that so I don't find the game very attractive. It's not very fun to play. The actual mechanics of the game I find frustrating and unfair, or just sometimes downright stupid, like the consumable items thing. Like, if I find fucking wing boots, just give me wing boots.
Yeah.
Just give me wing boots. Just fucking give them to me. Don't quit making me go buy them. I'm so mad. The localization sucks. All the words in the game are stupid, and they were written by idiots.
I think the localization is better than Simon Quest's localization.
Or
parts of Zelda 2's localization, for that matter.
I get it. Yeah, sure. I would say that it's definitely better than Simon's Quest, the game that just flat out lies to you all the time.
Right. Which is also a good game, for the record.
Some of the... Oh, my God. If you had told me that this game came out like 2 years before Zelda 2, I would be like, okay. I still don't want to play it, and I still have the same complaints, but I kind of see it.
I would guess that its development started before Zelda 2 came out.
Very possibly. Yeah. Very possibly. I found this game so frustrating, so glitchy. I found it also confusing. Some of the censorship makes it hard for me to find the church in the town because they took the big cross off of it.
That's true, they did.
And they didn't put a sign on it that says church, so sometimes I would go into the wrong building multiple times.
Did you try getting a map from Nintendo Power?
Saturn? I swear to God. And so I realize, like, a thing I hate about games, and this is a thing that I've gathered over our years podcasting together that you seem to enjoy about games.
Yeah.
Is that what I don't like is whenever the way to play a game is to follow this formula, and this formula has the correct answers. And if you don't have these answers, it's either not going to work or you're going to have a horrible time. Yeah. But here's the correct sequence of events. It's why I hated Majora's Mask so much, because I played it with a guide. And it's this idea of like, well, here's your task list you have to go complete. Right. You don't just get to play and explore and learn and figure things out. You need to do this task list. And this is very much a game where if you've got the task list of go here, get this key, go to this door, and then through this door, go here and get these boots to go get this key to go through this door, then yeah, it
came from that era of game design where if you want to just explore and try to figure things out, you can, but it's not going to make it easy on you.
Doing so, you're actively punished for doing so. I would say that. If you just want to go explore around, guess what? You're going to be doing shitloads of backtracking to go by various keys. Yeah. Oh, you used the wing boots to go up there because you thought that's where you go? No, you need the wing boots over here. Go find new wing boots because yours fucking exploded off your feet, I guess. I don't know.
And also the pendant doesn't work at all.
Yeah, there's a pendant item that's supposed to make you stronger, and it makes you weaker.
Yes.
It does the opposite of that.
It is a bug in the game. That guy on the Displaced Gamers YouTube channel, he created a Game Genie code to fix the pendant, and it kind of breaks the game. When the pendant works the way it's supposed to, the game is kind of too easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went out and I downloaded a ROM hack, and for people that like are interested in this game,
but you should be because it's a good game.
Hard disagree on every front there.
Wow. Oh,
like it's rare that I'm playing a game for the show, and I'm like, I have to stop not because I don't have the time or the ability to beat this, but because it's actively ruining my night. It's like, I remember I was sitting there, and it was like a day or two before Thanksgiving, and like I had all that weighing on me, and I was just like, I don't have the fucking time in the day.
I know you said you have all that weighing on you, but it sounded like you said you have all that weighing on you.
I have all these weighings on me, and I just don't have the time in the day to have my night fucking ruined by a garbage game. Like that's the thought that went through my head.
That's rough.
I downloaded the Faxanadu restoration, which is on romhacking.net. It is put out by a person named Unsavory Maggot. And it uncensors the whole game. Mm-hmm. It re-adds the name registration. It uses a different font because the font's kind of really weirdly hard to read in this game.
It is a little odd of a font. Especially when you're trying to write down your password, the
Yeah.
font is a little annoying.
It includes the original Hudson USA translation with very minor edits. And it's just a nicer looking, better playing, more coherent game, although it still maintains, again, all of the gameplay issues.
It looks like it puts the save system back in from the Japanese version.
Yeah, so you can say continue and
Nice.
whenever you die, and you can save stuff. It's a much nicer version of the game. It's a much nicer looking version of the game. It didn't fix the game for me, but if you're like Saturn, you're like, hey, I like that it's basically like shitty Zelda 2, then
Wow. Well, that's hard to be since Zelda 2 is already kind of shitty.
Oh no! I think the restoration is I don't know that I would experience Faxanadu another way if I were going back to play it. I'll say that. Because it really does kind of it fix a lot of stuff. It just graphically, it's a much better looking game, but having people actually say things that are coherent helps a lot. Yeah. But I feel like I've complained for a very long time. Would you like to say nice things about the game for a little bit to kind of counterbalance?
I think I've chimed in here and there. I still enjoy the game. I agree with some of the things that you were saying, even if they don't affect me the same way that they affect you.
This is what I find so interesting is I think actual gameplay wise, I think we both agree on the parts of the gameplay that suck.
Yeah.
But you're just I don't care.
Yeah, those things don't affect me as much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that it is not as tedious as Zelda 2 in the combat anyway. Other parts of the game make up for it by being extra tedious. But those are the parts I don't care about. Like I can backtrack. I know how to do that. It's fighting the hard thing that I can't do. And fortunately, the further you get in this game, the less hard things there are. There's more ugly things. Yeah. But they are ugly by design. And I'm okay with that. It gives it a very bleak feeling as far as the some of the ugly graphics. Like the mist area, I've always thought was really interesting. It's hard to navigate and it's ugly.
Yeah.
But it's ugly on purpose because it makes that area feel very foreboding and dark. And then you get out of it and the rest of the game is really kind of dry after that.
So if like Saturn, you're looking for a game with less options than Zelda 2 that is, by his own admission, but ugly, then Faxanadu might be the game. I do remember when I hit the miss area, I was like, what the fuck is this? What is this supposed to be? And I checked the guide I was using. It's like, oh, the mist area. And I was like, oh.
I love that area. That
it
area
just looks like it's full of farts.
When I first got there back in the early 90s, I just remember being completely blown away by that area. I was like, oh, this is so much darker and creepier than any other game I've played on NES. But, you know, now that I've played other things on other platforms, it looks like but at the time, it looked really impressive.
Yeah.
So I guess time has been unfair to this game.
Let's talk reception because this is where, because we were talking and I don't remember exactly what I said.
Yeah.
But you were sharing reviews of the game.
Yeah.
And I was basically saying, what the fuck were these people smoking? Because Famitsu gave the game a 29 out of 40, which is respectable. Yeah. That's not a bad score.
No,
not amazing, but it's okay.
That was pretty above average for Famitsu at the time.
Game rankings aggregate was 75%, which both these feel very high to me.
Oh, that's sad.
Like out of 10, I would give it like a.
I'd probably give it a 7.5. That sounds about right for me.
I'd give it maybe a 3.
Damn.
Like
you did not like this game.
It functioned, but I hated everything it did.
That's rough.
IGN gave the game an 8.5 on Virtual Console.
Yeah.
And you put a quote in here from their review. The structure is a bit like Nintendo's Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Thanks for telling us who did Zelda 2, by the way. IGN. Nintendo's Zelda 2. Or Konami's Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Both of which you might have previously played through the Wii's Virtual Console. But in some ways, Faxanadu's better than both of those games. Lies.
I can see where they're coming from. There are things that it does that are more technically impressive than either of those games. And it is a little more daring than either of those games, even if it falls a little flat.
More daring?
Yeah, like it tries to do some shit that neither of those games try to do. And that's like as far as the equipment system, and that's things that you didn't get in either of those games.
I will say I did like that when you got new equipment, it actually put it on, you could see it. It made you look different. That was cool.
Just like in regular Xanadu.
Nintendo Life gave the game an 8 out of 10, which says, I feel like you picked out the reviews that were just going to piss me off.
I put these in there before I knew your opinion on the game.
Quote, it's basically Zelda 2 without any of the flaws. There are no flaws.
No, just without the flaws
brought
that
over from Zelda 2.
Yeah.
Flaws like more interesting combat and navigable overworld and all those fucking flaws. And should be an absolutely essential purchase for anyone who either likes platformers, action games, or RPGs. And Retro Gamer, not even the UK is bereft of their weird love of this turd. Called it the 16th best game for the console. Well. IGN ranking it the 36th best game. I can absolutely think of 16 better NES games than Faxanadu.
I have got how many NES games do I have? I've got less than 100 NES games, I think. And it is one of them, and it is because it is at least one of the top 100 NES games for me.
Oof. Okay, so there are 900 or so North American Nintendo Entertainment System games officially licensed.
Yeah.
I think it would probably land in the top 100 just because I don't know that I could think of 100 other games. You know, like I'll say this: it does technically function from end to end.
Wow,
which already puts it over a large portion of the NES library. It is not bereft of very frustrating glitches and bugs, which in my case at least inhibited progression at multiple points. Didn't stop it, but did inhibit it. So that's going to put it below a lot of stuff. I don't know, man.
The first Zelda has a lot of bugs too. The first Mario has a lot of bugs.
But I never feel like playing those games, I'm never like, oh, the bugs are inhibiting my physical progression in this title right now.
I never had that feeling in this game either, for the record.
I was that fucking ladder. That fucking ladder. I don't know. Like it might end up see, here's my issue. I don't want to say it would end up in my top 100 because I actively was upset playing this game. And I don't want to put any game that actively upsets me in any top anything. But I think just by nature of it being like technically functional, it would have to be in the top 100. But begrudgingly so. I begrudgingly would place it there.
So I have a little over 100 NES games, but there are several of them that I like less than this. So I would say that it is easily in my top 100, might be in my top 75.
I think that's a better question. What NES game do I like less than Faxanadu?
Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Well, I don't know that I ever played that. Gilligan's Island I like less than Faxanadu.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I was never fooled into playing that title either. Yeah. Low G-Man is better. Section Z is better. And we're just going to go through a list. Look, here's my point.
So I'd just like to say for the record that it looks like reviews agree with me for the most part.
I'm definitely in the minority to the point that like I'm shocked. And it's one of these moments where I'm like, did I fundamentally misunderstand some mechanic? Did I have a controller mapped wrong? Like I've had such a disparate experience to seemingly every other human being that I'm shocked.
I think part of it might just be that you're looking for something else out of a game than what it is trying to bring to the table.
I mean, I came to it under the auspicion that it was going to be like
Simon's Quest.
it like, oh God, I hope not like Simon's Quest. But
that's also a beloved game for the record.
In the vein of, the NES Castlevanias, Zelda 2, Battle of Olympus, these kind of side-scrolling action
RPGs.
RPG lights, right? And in that camp, I don't know, man. And I think some of it, less than the years since playing games that do this better, more so just how much I really enjoy Zelda 2.
You might be in the minority there, too.
I think I am, because I really, really like Zelda 2.
That's generally considered one of the weaker games in that series.
Like, I'll pick Zelda 2 over a lot of Zelda games.
I would not.
And so I understand that I'm definitely in the minority there. I don't quite know what it is about Zelda 2 that does it for me.
Stockholm
but all
syndrome.
The things, maybe, all the things that do it for me there are removed in Faxanadu. And I think it wasn't until Faxanadu that I understood the parts of Zelda 2 that people didn't like.
Yeah. Are apparently all the things you love.
Yeah, are apparently the things that I love. I love the complicated combat. I enjoy that.
See, the first thing I would usually hear people complain about when they did complain about Zelda 2 were the iron knuckle fights. Like, that was usually the very first thing that people would complain about. That
What did I call them? Dark Nuts?
Dark Nuts is Zelda 1. Iron Knuckle is Zelda 2.
Yeah.
Is the iron knuckle fights and being knocked back into instant death pits. Those are usually the first two things, complaints that I hear about Zelda 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I like the combat. I like the magic system. I like the overworld. I like the random battles. I like the actual
I always hated
that
Zelda 2 makes you go into the menu every single time you want to cast a spell. Like, why is spell cast mapped to my select button if I can't use it without opening the pause menu first?
I guess that one never bothered me, because if I'm casting a spell, especially later in the game when you have many spells,
right,
I might want to stop and stare at my menu and think about it. So
but
every time
I'm
casting,
pre-gamed and already selected the spell on the previous screen.
Well, then sorry.
Exactly.
I think it's little things like that. Like, I would never lodge that as a complaint against Zelda 2, not because I think it's like awesome design,
right,
but because anytime I'm going to cast a spell, I'm back in that headspace of, here's a situation I'm in. Do I want to just ferry over it? Right. Do I want to cast my shield spell and maybe tank my way through it? Like, I'm in tactical decision making mode.
I do not like making decisions in the moment like that. I like to pregame all of my decisions. Like, if I could know before I walk into a dungeon exactly what all I'm going to do while I'm in there, I'm going to do that.
No, I might look up like a general lay of the land, like, all right, go in and go left, and then you're going to want to go right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, I like the experience of and it's the reason that I like roguelikes and stuff, is I really like the experience of this emergent gameplay, this exploration-based gameplay, this of me like going in there and being like, what's in here, seeing what's in here, experiencing what's in here, maybe getting knocked back or killed and thinking like, all right, I need to strategize. Like, how can I find a lot of enjoyment of whenever I have a room that I'm struggling with and I'm like, all right, well, what if I just do this? I didn't think about doing blank, and then I do it and it works.
Yeah.
That's very satisfying for me. And I could absolutely see people that are like, I don't want to have to like, I'm trying to find a nice way to say think. I'm trying not to be condescending because I don't mean it that way, but like someone who's like, I want to just like, I want to push forward and I want to hit the button and I want to know what's going to be there.
I want to know what the correct answer is. And I don't want to have to sit there and strategize every minute decision.
Okay.
I want a lot of things to be kind of autopilot so that I can think more about the broader picture and less about the moment to moment.
And I think this is just kind of an inherent difference. And I know we're already over on time and we're just basically talking about how we like games different. But I do think it's an inherent difference. And I think it's important to point out in the context of the show, as far as like, what you just said that I forgot because I took a
I like to make the macro
trail.
Decisions and not the micro decisions.
And when I sit down to play a game, what is most important to me every time is, what am I doing in this moment? Like, what am I doing right now? Like, sure, I would love for it to feed into a bigger thing. I would love for the macro decision to be a part of it, but I want what I'm doing right now to be fun. And it's why I don't have the stomach for a lot of these games that are like, well, after 20 hours, it really opens up, because I'm like, no, I don't want to not have fun for 20 hours. That's not what I'm playing a game for.
I'm willing to put in some work to get a good payoff. I am willing to do that.
I'm not. What I will do is just go. My first thought is, can I find an equivalent fun to the 20-hour payoff somewhere else that starts with that fun?
Yeah.
And that's what I will go seek
Sometimes
out.
I enjoy the payoff more if I put in the work for it.
There have been many times that I have put in the work on these payoff games, and then it happens, and I'm like, that was fucking it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
See, and I think that's another inherent difference. Is sometimes the work makes me enjoy it more when I do get to it, even if there's no real reason for that.
Yeah.
Like there's just something about all of the grinding that I put in first that makes the payoff more worthwhile.
Yeah, not me. I know I talk about it a lot, but I think it's why I like roguelikes so much. And I think a lot of it is why you don't, because being procedurally generated, there is no, but you know for a fact you're not working towards some like larger grandiose scheme.
Yeah. See, for me, when I play a roguelike, I'm like, well, whatever effort I just put into that run is useless to me now. I just wasted a bunch of time to fail. And now I have to start from the beginning. So now all that time that technically was enjoyable gameplay feels like wasted time to me.
Yeah, that's not how I approach them at all. My first thought is, one, I had fun doing it. So much like when I play a game of Pac-Man and then die on the second level, inevitably, I still enjoyed playing Pac-Man, but also I didn't learn nothing. I learned maybe some interactions. I learned some intricacies about a class or some abilities, or ran into some tactical situations that I solved in different ways. Like I, as a player, learned something, and I improved my skill as a player and my knowledge as a player. It's not reflected in the game. Like the game's not.
I acknowledged years ago that I am never improving anymore because I started real low and I've stayed there.
Well, I think
I plateaued early.
Like, roguelikes are fun because the thing they want you to learn isn't fast finger movements too. And it's a little easier when the thing you're learning is staring at these numbers and RPG mechanics and trying to see how they, there's no, like a lot of people playing roguelikes will pause them, go post a screenshot in a community somewhere and be like, this is what I'm on, and I'm surrounded by 17 dragons, and this is what my inventory has. What combination of shit can I do? Right. And I love that. That's so fascinating to me. Yeah. That then people will sit and stare at this puzzle of like, well, technically, you have 3 potions that are unidentified, so if one of them happens to do this, like, I love that. And I get that other people are just like, no, just fucking tell me a story and then tell me where to go and then tell me where to point my gun or my sword or my whatever, and then I'll do those things. And then you reward me with saying, good job, and here's your story and your level and your thing. And, there's the intrinsic rewards, I guess.
I like gameplay, but I dislike when I hit a failure state. There's something about failure state that really ruins it for me. And roguelikes inevitably build to that. Like most of your runs in a roguelike are going to be
you
failure.
are going to lose, period.
Yeah, that's like even when there is a success, you're going to hit failure a lot before you get there, and I get so discouraged by that I can never get there because every failure puts me back. Instead of me learning from something, I just get more and more frustrated to the point where I stop trying.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is and for people that might be interested in the genre, most modern roguelikes have options to turn off permadeath, and there's they all have toggles now, but
they also have a lot of things that carry over between runs and things like that.
I love the idea of a game that nobody assumes you have beaten or possibly ever will beat, but people will still sit around and talk about the fun they're having and the fun situations that occur, and like I enjoy that. I think we're very, very in the weeds. Legacy, this kind of it.
What's that?
There's this was like Faxanadu itself never got really a sequel or a follow up.
No.
Obviously we talked previously about how kind of the tangential larger franchise sort of continued on.
Right.
But this was more like a little wart that popped up and then just kind of was sliced off and never really went anywhere.
This was kind of a thing in this era where you did sometimes see these spin-off games on another console that just was a one and done and never addressed again. And we've stopped getting that now that all the systems are homogenized and we just get the same thing on every platform.
Yeah. And as far as final thoughts, I had a really hard time with this game.
I like to imagine that when you paused there, you were just blinking really fast.
that was. So I had a really hard time with this game. I found it just felt like way worse Zelda 2 for me. And then it turned into really, really frustrating.
Yeah.
And I got frustrated and turned it off. That's what it was for me. I don't know that it's a title I'll ever bother to return to. And that's it. That's my usually I like to have a blah 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 historical significance. I don't think I have that.
Yeah.
I'll say portions of it were interesting from a historical and design perspective.
I still enjoy it. I still enjoy going back to it. It is definitely a weird game in that it feels like the last half was rushed.
Yeah.
And there were times where it feels like they were trying so hard to do something artistically that they forgot that they also had to make it functional.
Right.
But overall, I still enjoy the experience. And for people who are looking for that kind of weird Japanese PC role-playing game of the mid-'80s, but slightly more consoleized, I think this is as close as you can get.
On the NES, at least.
Yeah, on the NES of this era.
Yeah. I will say, if you do want to try it out, again, go check out Faxanadu Restoration, because it is kind of the inherently superior version of it. You know, and you can also find the superior version of this show at patreon.com/retro warriors, where we do 20 minutes of whatever we talked about on the pre-show today.
Things that we wouldn't talk about on the normal show.
Things you would never hear us talk about on the normal show. Ever. And Andrew was here.
Yeah, he was.
So if you want to hear more Andrew chatting with people, he was on the pre-show this week, and it was a good time talking with Andrew, fulfilling his contractual obligation to be on one pre-show every 3 months.
His contractual obligation to be our friends.
And we want to thank the following patrons, starting with Genova's Witness.
And EMD.
Lucky Jarms.
Noah, the Roman Ostrich.
Screwed Up Letter Guy. Man, these names can be really long. I am guilty of voting for the game club, but never actually playing the...
Atreyu Wormwood.
Dooblemooch.
Smitty.
Linux user, by the way. Hey, Saturn, do you know how to tell someone's a Linux user?
Because they'll tell you.
Because they'll tell you.
And Kim Pallet.
Are all the patrons we want to thank for giving us money. Give us money, please. We would like some money. Do we like money?
Justin needs to be paid in order to play Faxanadu.
If you pay me enough, I'll play it again. I have no standards. There's no low that I won't sink to for financial gain.
If you pay him a whole lot, he'll even play World Court Tennis again.
Oh, man, now I'm comparing the two. I don't need to get into that territory. Please go to our Patreon. Please join our Discord, where you can tell me how wrong I am about Faxanadu and how stupid I am for these dumb, wrong opinions. And I would also love to hear your stupid, dumb, wrong opinions about Zelda 2. You can put this in our Discord. There's a link in the description.
I am curious what the feedback is going to be on this episode, because this is one of the few times we've been very divided on a game.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where the community falls on this.
It's going to be really, really interesting. I am prepared for people to shout at me. What was the last thing I said that everyone got mad about? Oh, I said Super Mario Land is a bad game.
It is.
But I only said it because it's true. And I only said bad because it's not fun to play. So just putting it
I say that Mario Land is a bad Mario game. It's an okay game.
I still say top 10 soundtrack of all time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oh, it's
phenomenal
soundtrack.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.